There we go. Now, let's look at the slideshow. All right. So for those of you that have been in the mentorship program for a while, you know that we stress the what's called CompTIA Security Plus certification. It is a widely accepted certification, and it is considered to be the absolute minimum level certification for most cybersecurity jobs. And again, it is not enough for you to get this and then work with this. The most important thing to remember is this Security Plus certification will get you in the door, but then the very next question you can expect is, when are you going to get a higher certification? All right, this is the bare minimum. But now, and by the way, if anybody has anything to say, please say it out loud. I can't see anyone. I just see my screen. So if you need to talk or ask a question, do it, verbally. I can't see hands raised or whatever. So the CompTIA has come up with a new version. They call it SYO-701. And that means that if you have been studying the SYO-601, you now have a choice. Do I stick with my 601 and go all the way through and get my Security Plus, or do I change and go for the 701, which has different security, different study guides, etc.? Is it worth it to stick with 601, or is it worth it to go to 701? That's what we're going to be covering today. This is from the CompTIA site. They said Security Plus has recently been updated to reflect skills relevant to job roles tasked with, and this is important, baseline security readiness and response to address today's threats, to prepare candidates to be more proactive in preventing the next attack. Okay, baseline is the #1 word that you can see in there. And I'll read a little bit more about this. It says, more IT job roles are tasked with baseline security readiness and responding. So now, if you think about it, we're talking about operational cybersecurity, okay? And it says, updates to the 701 reflect those skills, prepare you to be more proactive in preventing the next cyber attack. So if you think about it, they're spending a little more time on security operations and a little less time on things like governance. Why are we doing this? What is the legislation or whatever? So it's more oriented toward operations, if you think about it. They say that from 601 to 701, 20% of the exam objectives were updated. So that means if you're studying the 601, 80% of what you're studying still exists and is still being tested, and you can still pass with just that. All right, so it's not like it's a whole new exam. They changed part of it. They shifted things around a little bit. Okay, so they said current trends and hybrid environments, they increased that in the 701. Attention to things like hybrid environments. Now, when I talk about hybrid environments, what do you think I mean by that? Hybrid environments.
Mentees but Chris?
I'm sorry?
I said mentees but Chris.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, go ahead, Chris.
The current business world is not located just to the building of the business world. It is currently people who work in the building and people who work outside the building. That could be remote access to what's centralized or what's in the current business. So they're either teleworkers, it's a hybrid of teleworkers and people who currently work in the building, or remote workers.
Okay, good. there's another thought on this when they talk about hybrid in the Security Plus. They're referring to a mixture of on-premise and cloud services. So it's being provided from two different environments, but all to the same customers. Okay, that's what hybrid typically means, on-prem and cloud, rather than everything on-prem or everything in the cloud. Okay? The timelines, this is the two exams. The 601 came out in 2020, 3 years ago, and it is retiring in July of next year. That means if you're studying for the 601 and you want to take the 601 exam, you can take the 601 exam until the end of June next year. All right? Now, the 701 came into being in July of this year, and it's going to retire in 2026. And then I'm just estimating, you know, based on this time frame, that the SYO-801 will probably be introduced around November of 2025. Perhaps. I don't know for sure, but that's just my estimation. But here's the thing. Once you get Security Plus, they're not going to ask you what version you got. And let me point that out. I have my Security Plus, but I got mine with SYO-301 back in 2007. So it was like 16 years ago I got my Security Plus. So they don't ask, do you have your, do you have the 701 exam? They're just going to say, do you have Security Plus certification? Okay? So remember that as you're thinking about it. Here is the difference in what they call the exam domains. And on the left, for the 601, you notice that governance down at the bottom is not anywhere on the right. And you notice that there is, on the right, the number one domain is security operations. So if you think about it, there's probably less of a focus on the reason why we're doing this, or the things that we're required to do, or the reports that we have to file, or those sorts of things. What they're focusing on is security operations. How to have a robust, multi-layered approach towards security, rather than what is the legislation that requires us to do security in the first place, if you think about it. So more toward operations, more toward making you productive the moment you walk in the door, if you think about it. And also, one other thing, on the left in the 601, it says implementation was the number one domain in terms of percentages. But most of us are going to get hired into an existing security infrastructure or team. You're not going to stand one up. So you don't have to implement. You just have to be productive once you arrive. So there's less focus on implementation. See what I'm saying? There's more focus on operation. So think about it that way. Okay? So here's something else to think about. It's in the SY-701, this is straight from CompTIA, and it says, this exam will certify that you have the knowledge and the skills required to blah, 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 blah. Look at the little call out on the side. This is identical from the 601. None of this changed. All right? So, my conclusion, and this is just my conclusion, there are few benefits to staying with 601 if you haven't already started. If you are already studying the 601, you have your study guide, you got some practice exams, you have your voucher, you're setting your study schedule so that you're going to be able to test on your 601, continue. Go ahead and do it. go all the way through with your 601 and complete it, put it behind you, and then start working on your next certification. There's no reason to cancel your current studies with the 601, but if you haven't started yet, if you bought that 601 study guide and you still haven't opened it up yet, well, you might consider going straight to the 701 unless you can complete it all by July, the end of June. Okay? So if you're preparing to test, if you've already been studying and you're already getting ready to schedule your exam, stick with 601. No reason to change because you are already focused on that specific certification. But if you're just getting started, don't go with the 601, go with the 701. One of the main reasons is it'll last a little bit longer. In all of these certifications, just so you know, you have to do what's called continuing education. You can't just get it and have it forever. You have to do continuing education, and that's true for any certification. I had a PMP for a long time, 12, 14 years. I had a PMP. Every X number of years, I had to recertify for my PMP. The Security Plus, every few years, you have to recertify. For your CISSP, every few years, you have to recertify. So just expect that you're going to be constantly learning. You will. Nobody's ever going to reach a point where they say, I don't need to study anymore. So if you're preparing to test on the 601, press on. Go ahead and do it. If you're just getting started, deciding which book to buy, I recommend buying the 701. Okay, are there any questions? That was it. I wanted to share that part with everybody. Any questions?